I want you to close your eyes for a second. Well, I mean, unless you're driving right now, in which case, please definitely keep them open.
Yeah, safety first, always.
Right, exactly. But if you can, just imagine the year 2036. So we are a full decade into the future.
Okay, I'm with you.
Imagine a world where a person with total paralysis can just, stand up and walk again. Or picture someone whose mind has been slowly erased by Alzheimer's suddenly finding this digital bridge right back to their memories.
It really does sound like pure science fiction, doesn't it?
It totally does. And you
Yeah.
would naturally expect the secret to this kind of medical miracle to be, I don't know, locked away in some sterile multi-billion-dollar Silicon Valley laboratory.
Absolutely. That's the standard expectation for advanced medtech.
Right. But what if the key to all of this wasn't invented in a traditional tech lab at all? What if the foundational material was actually grown in a coffee plantation in Costa Rica?
Which is just a massive paradigm shift. I mean, if the projections we're looking at hold true, we are witnessing a complete inversion of how we think about advanced medicine.
And where it comes from right now.
Exactly, where it comes from, and crucially, what kinds of materials we actually trust to put inside the human body.
And that is exactly the premise we are getting into with today's Deep Dives. I'm your host, and we are going to unpack this together.
And I'm thrilled to be here to provide the analytical lens on the science side of things.
Because we've got our hands on a really fascinating document today. It lays out a highly ambitious 10-year horizon for something called 3D biogenic graphene, or 3D Bio-G.
Yeah, 3D Bio-G. And it's basically a roadmap for neuroreconstructive medicine, detailing the models and the projections of Martin Gutierrez Guerrero and his company, Nova Amazonia.
And honestly, the scope of this document is just staggering.
It really is. I mean, they aren't proposing some minor iterative step in medical technology here. They're proposing a platform that could fundamentally alter the treatment of currently incurable neurological diseases.
So our mission today is to figure out the how and the why. Like, how is the agricultural waste of coffee plants, literally the leftover branches and leaves from pruning, projected to impact over 85 million lives globally over the next 10 years?
It's a huge claim, but to approach this properly, we really have to look closely at the mechanics they're proposing.
Right. And before we can even understand why this coffee-derived material is so revolutionary, I feel like we have to talk about why our current attempts at nanotechnology are failing so badly inside the body.
We definitely have to look at the predecessor. So if you followed technology or material science at all, you've undoubtedly heard of traditional chemical 2D graphene.
Oh yeah, the miracle material.
Exactly. It's incredibly strong, highly conductive, and remarkably lightweight. In the electronics world, they often call it the God material.
The God material. I mean, it sounds like the absolute perfect solution for building interfaces in the brain. So, why aren't we already doing it?
Well, because in medicine, traditional 2D graphene has a very dark side, and the problem really starts with how it's synthesized.
Okay, break that down for me.
So the aggressive chemical production required to make 2D graphene leaves behind trace others. We are talking specifically about strong acids and toxic solvents.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second. You have this highly conductive material that you want to put in the human brain, but it's literally carrying a toxic chemical residue from the factory.
Yeah, not ideal.
That alone sounds like a total non-starter. But looking at the document, it suggests it's not just the chemical residue that's the problem, it's the actual physical shape of the stuff.
That's the bigger issue, honestly. The 2D and 2D graphene means it is a two-dimensional flat structure.
Like a sheet of paper.
Basically, yeah. It is essentially a sheet that is only one single atom thick. And when you introduce a flat, atom-thick sheet into the wet, dynamic biological environment of the human body...
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah, it acts like a microscopic nanorazor.
Nanorazors inside your cells. I remember reading that part in the source material and thinking, wow, that sounds like swallowing microscopic glass shards.
It is severely damaging. Because those incredibly sharp, flat edges, 2D graphene physically tears cell membranes apart.
Which is horrifying.
It is. In the medical field, we call this direct cytotoxicity. It is just a fundamental structural incompatibility with biology.
Well, it makes complete sense then that the body's immune system would just absolutely freak out and attack it.
Oh, totally. The human immune system is highly attuned to foreign threats, especially ones that are actively causing physical trauma to cells.
Right, because it's literally slicing them open.
Exactly. When the immune system detects these 2D graphene sheets slicing through cellular material, it launches a massive defensive inflammatory response.
So it tries to block it off.
Yes, it encapsulates the foreign material, creating these really thick barriers called glial scars.
Glial scars.
Right, and ultimately, this leads to the complete immunological rejection of the implants. They become totally useless because the body just walls them off completely.
So the very material we thought would act as the ultimate neural interface is basically being treated like a hostile invader by our own biology.
Which is incredibly frustrating for researchers.
I bet. Which brings us to Nova Amazonia and their operations down in Cartago, Costa Rica. They look at this problem of toxic, sharp, flat graphene, and they turn to coffee pruning waste.
Yeah, it sounds crazy at first.
I have to push back here. How do you get high-tech graphene out of a dead coffee branch? And more importantly, how does it solve the glass shard problem?
It's brilliant, really. The solution they've developed relies entirely on biomimicry and a completely different synthesis process.
Yeah.
Instead of using harsh acids to build flat sheets, they use a process called thermal reduction. They apply this to the organic lignin, the woody part of the coffee plant waste.
So they just bake it?
Basically, yes. By baking it at highly specific temperatures, they burn away everything except a pure carbon skeleton.
Okay, so what's left over?
The resulting material, this 3D BioG, is not flat. It is a three-dimensional, highly porous fractal network.
Fractal network.
Right. And because it's biogenic, meaning it's derived from a plant rather than synthesized in industrial chemicals, there are absolutely zero toxic residues.
So because they are starting with the cellular structure of a plant, the end result isn't a sharp sheet of paper. It's more like, what, a microscopic sponge?
A sponge is an excellent visual, but not just a random sponge. Its structural geometry at the microscopic level perfectly imitates the extracellular matrix of the human brain.
The extracellular matrix.
Yeah, that matrix is the natural biological scaffolding that holds our brain cells together. So when you introduce this 3D biogenic graphene into neural tissue, the body does not perceive a threat.
It doesn't see a glass shard. It sees familiar architecture.
Precisely. It's the exact opposite of the 2D rejection we talked about. Because it's a safe, biologically familiar scaffolding, neurons can actually weave themselves right into the pores of the material.
Wait, really? They just grow right into it?
They do. They can grow, establish physical connections, and communicate without triggering those immune alarms that cause glial scarring.
That is wild.
The concept here is moving from a material that slashes cells to a material that cradles them.
I mean, if the clinical trials back this up, that is a profound shift. The brain doesn't just tolerate it, it actively hosts it.
Actively hosts it, exactly.
So if we accept the premise that the brain will welcome this 3D biogenic structure, let's look at how the document proposes using it to repair damaged neurological circuits.
This is where the roadmap gets really exciting.
According to Nova Amazonia's 10-year plan, they are targeting 50 million people across 3 initial applications. And the one that caught my eye first was spinal cord injuries.
Yes, and this is where the electrical properties of that carbon network become crucial. A spinal cord injury is essentially a severed cable.
Right.
The electrical signals from the brain simply cannot cross the physical gap of the injury to reach the muscles in the legs or arms.
The physical wire is cut, so that signal stops. But how does a coffee sponge fix a cut wire?
The proposal uses these implants as 3D synaptic bridges. You see, the electrical conductivity of this specific biogenic graphene is virtually identical to our own biological conductivity.
Wait, I need to pause you there. Because even if you put a highly conductive bridge in that gap, nerves don't just magically know which way to grow, do they? Like, they don't just grow randomly into the sponge.
No, and you're touching on a major hurdle in neuroregeneration there. Nerves absolutely need physical guidance.
So how does the implant provide that?
The microscopic pores in the 3D BioG act as physical tunnels. As the ambient electrical gradients of the body pass through this conductive matrix, motor neurons use the tunnels as a scaffold.
To grow back.
Yes, to regenerate their axons, those long threads that carry nerve impulses. The physical geometry actually guides them across the gap.
Reconnecting the broken circuit.
Exactly, which conceptually restores the flow of electrical signals straight to the muscles.
Okay, so it's providing both the physical tunnel and the electrical environment to coax the nerve to grow back. That makes total sense for a severed cord. But what about when the wires aren't actually cut, but they're just misfiring and causing chaos? Like, the document brings up Parkinson's disease, where patients suffer from severe tremors.
A very different challenge, but yes, 3D BioG addresses that too.
Because I know deep brain stimulation is a current treatment for Parkinson's, but it sounds incredibly barbaric when you read the mechanics of it.
It can be pretty rough. Current deep brain stimulation often relies on rigid metal electrodes being inserted deep into the brain tissue.
It's like driving a steel rebar into a delicate sea anemone. Like every time the person's heart beats or they take a breath, the brain shifts slightly inside the skull, right?
Yes.
So that rigid rebar must just scrape against that incredibly soft tissue constantly,
That visual is intense, but honestly, it's biologically accurate. That constant micro friction causes micro tears and scar tissue over time.
which can't be good.
It's not. And because metal has a high electrical impedance compared to brain tissue, you have to push a relatively high amount of energy through the wire just to get the signal out.
Like having to yell to be heard.
Exactly. And that excess energy can cause collateral damage to adjacent healthy neurons.
So how does the 3D coffee graphene change that dynamic?
Well, because it is a porous, carbon-based sponge, it offers a soft, highly flexible interface. It actually moves with the brain tissue rather than against it.
Oh, so no more microfriction.
Right. Furthermore, it has incredibly low electrical impedance. This allows neurologists to perform ultra-precise electrical tuning.
Meaning they don't have to yell anymore.
Exactly. They can deliver the exact minute microcurrent needed to suppress the Parkinson's tremors without frying the surrounding area.
That's a huge upgrade. But the source material goes a step further, and this is where I really had to scrutinize the claims.
The neurotrophic factors.
Yes. It says that in Parkinson's, the implant isn't just an electrical wire, it's actively releasing medicine to heal the brain. I mean, it's a piece of baked carbon.
It sounds impossible.
It does.
Mhm.
How does it dispense medicine without micropumps or a tiny internal computer?
It all comes back to that 3D molecular porosity we talked about. The pores in the graphene can be preloaded, acting as a passive controlled release system.
Oh. So it's like soaking a sponge in soapy water before you wash a car. It just slowly leaks out.
That is a very apt comparison, actually. You can load the microscopic pores with neurotrophic factors, which are essentially proteins that promote the survival and growth of neurons.
Okay.
And as the ambient fluids of the brain wash over the implant, and as mild electrical currents pass through it, these proteins slowly detach and diffuse into the surrounding tissue.
Wow. So a single implant is performing a dual function.
Yes, it's electrically suppressing the tremors in real time, while simultaneously creating a localized chemical environment that stimulates the birth of new neurons in the damaged area.
It manages the symptom with electricity and attacks the underlying cause with chemistry, all from a passive structure. That's just an elegant design.
It's brilliant engineering.
And that idea of dual function brings us to the application that honestly gave me the most pause. Alzheimer's disease.
This is a controversial one for sure.
The document describes Alzheimer's as a disease that destroys the communication highways in the hippocampus by building up amyloid plaques.
Right, and the hippocampus is the critical routing center for memory and learning.
So the plaques block the signals.
Exactly. The amyloid plaques associated with Alzheimer's act like physical roadblocks. They gunk up the synapses, so the electrical signals, the impulses that literally make up your memories and thoughts simply cannot get through the biological pathway.
The document says the solution is creating a, quote, biodigital hybrid network. And I have to throw a flag here.
Fair enough. It's a bold claim.
Alzheimer's destroys highly complex, intricate memory networks. You can't just shove a piece of conductive carbon into the hippocampus and expect it to magically remember what my childhood home looked like. Like, how does an implant actually know where to route the signals to save a memory?
That is the exact right question to ask, and it highlights a really common misconception about neural interfaces.
Okay, set me straight.
The graphene implant isn't acting like a computer hard drive storing your memories. It doesn't know the memory at all.
Then what is it doing?
What it does is exploit the electrical principle of the path of least resistance.
Walk me through that.
When a biological pathway in the brain is blocked by an amyloid plaque, the electrical signal struggles to cross, right?
Right.
If you introduce this highly conductive 3D biogenic matrix around the damaged area, the electrical signal will naturally take the easiest path.
Oh, I see.
The graphene physically spans the gap of the plaque. It takes over the electrical load, routing the signal through the carbon sponge instead of the damaged biological tissue.
So, if the plaque is a roadblock on a highway, the implant isn't building a whole new city with new memories.
Nope.
It's just building a bypass bridge over the collapsed highway. So the cars, the original biological signals, can still reach their original destination.
That is exactly the mechanism they are banking on. By providing an alternate, low-resistance electrical path, they preserve the circuit that would otherwise wither and die from disuse.
thereby preserving cognitive function.
Exactly.
It's essentially hacking the brain's hardware to save the biological software.
That's a great way to put it.
Now, if we follow this underlying logic that this 3D structure can safely bypass roadblocks in the brain and bridge severed physical cables in the spine, what happens when the actual insulation of our nervous system fails?
Which brings us to the next phase of the roadmap.
Right. The document outlines 4 more frontiers, starting with multiple sclerosis. Now, my understanding is that MS attacks the myelin sheath, which is the insulation around our nerves.
Yeah, think of a nerve like a copper wire and the myelin sheath as the rubber coating around it.
Okay.
If you strip off the rubber coating, the electrical signal leaks out into the surrounding tissue and shorts the circuit. MS is the progressive loss of that biological insulation.
The Nova Amazonia document proposes using these biogenic matrices to stimulate a type of cell called oligodendrocytes.
Yes, those are the cells that produce myelin.
So the goal is to force the body to re-insulate its own nerves.
And
But it says the matrices do this by, quote, emitting highly specific electrical micropulses. Again, I have to pause.
I know what you're going to ask.
Emit micropulses from a passive coffee sponge. Where is the power coming from? Is there a tiny lithium battery wedged in the patient's brain?
No batteries are required, which is actually a major advantage here. The model suggests using electromagnetic induction.
Oh, like how I charge my phone by setting it on a wireless pad.
Very similar physics, yeah. A patient might wear a small, discrete device behind their ear, kind of similar to a hearing aid, that generates a specific magnetic field.
Okay, and that field just goes into the head.
Right. That magnetic field passes harmlessly right through the skull and interacts with the conductive 3D graphene implanted at the site of the MS damage.
And it creates a current.
Exactly. The graphene harvests that magnetic energy and converts it into a highly localized, specific electrical microcurrent right where those oligodendrocytes need stimulation.
That is just brilliant. You power it from the outside without ever breaking the skin.
It's completely non-invasive for the power delivery.
And they are applying this bypass logic to ALS, or amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, as well.
Yes. In ALS, the motor neurons progressively die off. The brain wants to move a muscle, but the signal dies before it reaches the destination.
Which eventually affects vital functions like autonomous breathing, right?
Unfortunately, yes. The proposed solution uses bioelectric patches of 3D BioG as a direct bypass system. If the upper neuron fails, the patch bridges the gap to directly stimulate the muscle tissue below.
Aiming to preserve those critical autonomous functions.
Exactly, buying patients precious time.
Buying time. But the application that truly required me to read the section, 3 times to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding the physics, was their work on vision.
Ah, the artificial bioretinas.
Yes. Cortical blindness and macular degeneration.
Yeah.
We are literally talking about putting a coffee-derived material inside the human eye to restore sight.
It's probably their most ambitious target.
I understand that the material conducts electricity, but how does carbon actually see?
Well, it relies on a different inherent characteristic of the material.
Yeah.
It has unique photoelectric properties. 3D BioG doesn't just conduct ambient electricity, it can interact with light at the quantum level.
So light hits this dark carbon mesh, and what? It knocks electrons loose to generate a current.
That is the photoelectric effect in a nutshell, yeah. Because the 3D structure can be engineered at the nanoscale, the document proposes tuning the porosity so that it absorbs incoming photons and translates them directly into electrical signals.
Wow.
By placing this matrix in the eye as an artificial bioretina, it mimics the electrical voltage that the ganglion cells of the optic nerve naturally expect from biological photoreceptors.
It captures the light and translates it into the electrical language the brain already speaks.
Precisely.
The versatility of this single material is staggering. And they cap off their projection with a final frontier, which is dealing with strokes.
Right. So when a stroke occurs, an area of the brain dies from a lack of oxygen causing necrosis. But surrounding that dead zone is an area called the penumbra zone.
And the penumbra zone is still alive.
It is heavily damaged but potentially salvageable if treated correctly and quickly enough.
And the proposal is to implant cortical patches of this graphene directly into that penumbra zone.
Exactly. The graphene patch acts as both a physical roadmap and an electrical beacon.
For what?
For stem cells. The hypothesis is that stem cells naturally circulating in the body will migrate to the patch, using it as a scaffold to differentiate into new neurons.
Thereby radically accelerating the repopulation of the damaged brain area.
That's the theory, yes.
And this expansion going into MS, ALS, vision, and strokes, this is what radically changes the math on their global impact models, isn't it?
It changes everything. The original projection for just mobility and Alzheimer's was around 50 million people.
Which is already a huge number.
But when you factor in these 4 additional applications, combined with the undeniable demographic reality of a rapidly aging global population, the 10-year impact projection jumps significantly.
To over 85 million people.
Yes, Nova Amazonia is modeling that over 85 million people worldwide could benefit from this technology by 2036.
85 million lives.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we have to ground ourselves and remind everyone listening, these are 10-year projections based on early models.
Very important point. It is an incredibly ambitious roadmap, and countless medical hurdles remain before this is widely available.
But if their clinical models hold up, and this actually works, the sheer scale of manufacturing required brings us right back full circle to where this all begins.
Back to the soil.
Right. We have to look at the socioeconomic reality of sourcing the world's most advanced medical technology from agricultural waste in the global south.
It presents a really profound duality. The raw material is the organic waste generated from pruning coffee plants.
And what normally happens to that waste?
Historically, this biomass is either just left to rot or openly burned, which generates massive carbon emissions. But now it is being positioned as the foundational substrate for a neuro-reconstructive revolution.
I keep thinking about the irony here. In modern culture, we usually view something like quantum-level nanomedicine and everyday farming as totally opposite ends of the human experience.
We definitely compartmentalize them.
Yeah, we tend to think of agriculture as rooted in our past and biodigital brain hacking as living in the far future. But in this scenario, they are completely dependent on each other.
It encapsulates a fascinating philosophy about scientific advancement. For decades, we spent billions trying to force a chemically synthesized, industrially manufactured 2D material into the human body.
And the body violently rejected it.
Right. But when researchers looked closely at the structural genius of a coffee plant, a natural, biogenic, 3D fractal design that evolved over millions of years, the body recognized it.
The sterile laboratory is no longer isolated from the muddy field.
Not at all.
It's a proposed dual restoration. On one end, you have the potential to heal the earth by rewriting the rural economy of places like Costa Rica, giving immense high-tech value to a byproduct that used to just be burned.
A huge economic and environmental win.
And simultaneously, on the other end, you have the potential to heal humans by solving some of the most devastating degenerative diseases we face today.
If Nova Amazonia achieves even half of what this document outlines, it forces the scientific community to redefine what we consider high-tech.
How so?
Well, high-tech isn't necessarily a clean room filled with harsh chemicals and toxic solvents. Sometimes the highest technology available is simply understanding how to harvest a biological geometry that nature perfected under the sun.
That is incredibly well said. So, to you listening, the next time you hold a warm cup of coffee in your hands in the morning, I want you to look a little closer at it.
It's not just a beverage anymore.
Exactly. You aren't just looking at a drink that gets you through a morning meeting. You aren't just looking at an economic engine for rural farming regions. If these projections become our reality, you are quite literally looking at the molecular scaffolding that will build the medicine of tomorrow.
It is a powerful reminder that the blueprints for our future survival are often hidden in the everyday things we take for granted.
Which leaves me with a final thought.
Yeah.
I want you to mull over today as you go about your routine.
Oh, this should be good.
If the structural blueprint to potentially bypass Alzheimer's and bridge severed spinal cords was hiding in the discarded, dead branches of a Costa Rican coffee plant this whole time,
Right.
what other waste materials in our daily lives are secretly holding the keys to our most impossible scientific breakthroughs?
That really makes you wonder.
Maybe the structural cure for the next great disease is already sitting in a compost bin right outside your window, just waiting for us to look at it with the right lens.
That is a question that should keep every materials scientist awake at night.
We'll leave you to ponder that. Keep exploring, stay curious, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.